What a season we just had in the Tennessee Titans franchise. We were so close to going to the Super Bowl this season. That's about as close as you can get without actually getting there. I've had a really good time with this franchise, and our 2 seasons so far couldn't have been more opposite of each other. We had, of course, losing double-digit games to begin the series back in year 1, and then starting to figure some things out. And this year, it looked like it was going to be a really up and down, and maybe a season where we didn't make the playoffs here either. But we did. We finished strong. The offense started to click like they hadn't before in the series. And we beat Denver big. We beat Kansas City, the 1 seed. And then we get Buffalo and come up 1 play shy of going to a Super Bowl to face a 7 seed Chicago team. Today we're going to recap the season and also spend some time breaking down the NFL draft for the next offseason. Right now, I am looking to do the offseason on Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. Central Time. This video will go up on Friday, but I'm recording it on Thursday, and lately, my throat hasn't been 100%, but it feels really good at the moment, so as long as it doesn't get worse or anything, we should be on track to do the off-season this weekend. I'll put out a community post if anything changes, but if we're good to go Saturday morning, I will schedule the stream, 2 p.m. Central Time, for the second off-season here in the Titans franchise. Let's see if I can actually keep the recap brief this time. Every time I sit down to record one of these, I'm like, yeah, we'll knock this out quick. And then it's like, I spent 40 minutes talking about the season. Well, this season was an interesting one for us because I think we all had a pretty positive feel going into the year after the offseason that we had, but the season did not get off to a very good start as Cleveland dominated our defense. Nick Chubb was outstanding, and it was kind of a sign of things to come for the run defense. That was kind of the big weakness of the season. The Tampa game, of course, is one of the more heartbreaking finishes and collapses you'll see on this channel as the Bucs scored 27 unanswered to steal a game away from us. It's hard to forget losing a game like this. It put us into a spot where I felt like we really had to win some games quickly, and we did after the losing streak before losing 2 more games. We lost to Ryan Tannehill and the Seattle Seahawks as sacks and turnovers were kind of an issue for us in this specific game. Jamal Adams, wasn't that a pick 6? Or at least, wasn't a pick 6, but I know I threw a bad pick to him in there. And there were a lot of bad interceptions this year and a lot of high-scoring, entertaining games. I thought, even when we lost, it was certainly more enjoyable than year 1. But it was an interesting path this year because we were a very streaky team. We had, I think, 3 losing streaks and 3 winning streaks all in the same season. We handled our business against the Jaguars pretty well this season, along with Houston, and it was really the Colts that were the main competition for us. And we won that first meeting 37-31. Overtime win that benefited us because of a flaw in the game that won't review anything if it's a walk-off score in overtime. So the game should have been extended, but we ended up winning off a technicality. And really that seemed to be part of the season's turning point because it launched us onto a 3-game win streak before the Colts got their revenge against us and the high-flying Bengals. They put up 400 yards and an impressive 4th quarter to take us down. But where things really got interesting were the final 4 games, beginning with a matchup with previously the best team in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons. This was a back-and-forth, high-octane matchup, and probably the second best game of the year next to the AFC Championship. We saw the Falcons were the real deal, and we got to see what we were capable of when we were challenged. I just got so comfortable with this offense down the stretch, and we scored at least 31 points in all 4 of those games and carried that momentum into the postseason. The Bills were the one team with a defense that could actually slow us down, and we only scored 21 points, almost made it 28 there at the end. Certainly the football season is long enough to where I can get significantly more comfortable with players and the team overall as the season goes on. And I think you saw that here. Finally, I got into the comfort zone playing with Malik Willis as the quarterback and actually running a bit more of a passing game. But I also felt like I was just playing mostly good down the stretch, and we eliminated a lot of the turnovers. Couple against the Falcons. I think one of those at least was like a pass that was kind of unlucky. I did end up adjusting the sliders to make the pass blocking what I felt to be more realistic. If we sign a player like Elgton Jenkins, how about actually have that feel like it benefits the team? I then dropped it by 1 for the Bills game, and I really felt like the pressure there was a lot more reasonable. Like, I'm always looking to make ratings matter whenever I'm messing with sliders, more than anything. It's more important than the challenge to me. But later in this stretch is when we began to really focus on Sal Sexton stretching the field, and I just felt like passing, my eyes were in the right spots at the right time consistently, more than most times when I'm playing this game, and hopefully that can just carry on. I'm obviously still missing some things, but I think I hit a lot of plays that I wasn't earlier in the season and in year 1. What was interesting too this year is that I wasn't able to do the same type of running with Malik Willis, because I think in one of the updates, EA might have tweaked some things with read option defense, and it just seemed like whenever I called it, there was never like open space. Now, the play I found that has created that open space all over again is a play like this, which is a read option lead, which is my favorite read option because it gives the quarterback a lead blocker and doesn't make them take on the first defender, which is usually a bad idea in Madden because of the inflated fumbles you'll see. This is still Derrick Henry's offense, however. He ran for 1,700 yards, 18 touchdowns on the season, and compared to year 1, the yardage went way up, the efficiency went way up, touchdowns were up. Really, Henry was better in every category. Derrick Henry is not the type of running back you take off the field very much. Hassan Haskins played in the finale. Raheem Mostert played very sparingly and on special teams. I liked having Mostert. He filled the role perfectly. I'd be open to him coming back next year depending on regression and contract. But also keep in mind right now that Derrick Henry is going to be a free agent once we get to the offseason. Calvin Ridley was a newcomer along with Mecole Hardman, and I think it took a while for me to start really figuring out how to use an outside receiver effectively in this game, because we didn't do it much in year 1. So early in the year, his stat lines were really sporadic, and as the offense got more consistent down the stretch, it was clear Calvin Ridley was the #1 receiver. Now, I think a lot of people are going to remember the drop from Calvin Ridley the most, the last play of our season, a play that if he makes, we are likely in the Super Bowl. Sal Sexton made a big impact on this team as our first-round tight end, and once I sim to Super Bowl week, he should be given star development because he was named Rookie of the Year in the AFC. Doesn't show up here in the awards yet, but I showed off the awards already in the Week 18 episode. But he's just different. He can outrun, linebackers and safeties, no problem. Made a bunch of tough catches, but we knew there were injury concerns coming into the year. They showed up late. They showed up in preseason as well. Treylon Burks, 755 yards, 4 touchdowns. I really want to make him more of the focal point next year, and I think that he probably should have gotten even more playing time this season. There were times when Mecole Hardman was on the field, and it was like, maybe Burks should be here instead. He still played, 80+% of the snaps, though. It's just that I don't think I targeted him enough. Mecole Hardman, I thought, was fine, filled a specific role really well. I think initially I wanted him to be this guy who would run vertical a lot, and the more and more I think about it, that's just not a role that actually ends up materializing all that much. I think an elite deep threat, you can just tell him to go deep and make plays, but guys like Mecole Hardman are not going to be productive just because you can send them downfield. I think there's way more to it, and I think that actually stretching the field with like a deep crossing route offers more benefit than a straight vertical shot. I don't expect Hardman to come back next year, but it's not impossible. I think we'll have plenty of cap space. I'll still want a fast guy for screens and punt returns and stuff. Maybe it's Hardman, maybe it's somebody else. Paul Taylor, though, he was somebody who always seemed to show up at the right time, because where he was on the depth chart, there are a couple formations that put him into a really good spot where he would get isolated against the defense a lot. And he's a receiver that I trusted. Didn't use significantly or consistently, but it feels like you remember every catch he made as being a pretty big one. His yards per reception has to be pretty nice, and you can just look at the box score and like a 23-yarder here randomly. There was a 27 in this game, a 22, an 18, a 20. He's there for one play a day, it seems. I was also really impressed with Kyle Phillips in the Week 18 game, and that game alone might get him a little more of a chance to make an impact for us in his third season if we don't bring in too much competition. I also think that the backup tight ends played their roles really well, and Chris Manhertz, I knew what I was getting with him. He's a blocking first tight end, but he also showed he could make catches here or there, and it wasn't often we needed him to. But whether it's Manhertz or a similar type of tight end, I want that role in the offense going forward. I'd be open to a return if he doesn't regress a ton. And then Chig Okonkwo. He didn't really show up much in the regular season as our third tight end, but when it came to the playoffs, I know it's only 8 catches. It feels like so much more. Like 8 catches in 3 games doesn't sound like much, but he certainly made all of those count. And I think that you have to at least be curious now about some of the things we could do with both him and Sal Sexton next year in certain packages. The offensive line, Elton Jenkins, I think gave up a lot of sacks because the Sliders were in a rough spot for much of the year, but I think that he's still going to be a cornerstone of this line. Nicholas Petit-Frere at left tackle. I think I'm willing to stay patient with him. He's an okay tackle right now on a rookie contract, and I felt like he didn't cause a ton of problems at left tackle. My area of focus is probably going to be the interior, specifically at center, because that was a weakness for us throughout the year. We had Netane Moody play there, and he can help in the running game a lot, and pretty much all of the linemen here are going to be somewhat good for the running game, but it's all about getting somebody who also holds up in pass protection. That can be an issue. We had Austin Ryder in the playoffs, and I felt like he at least played passable, but Ed Oliver, I think, got the better of him a couple times in the Bills game. And then defensively, I didn't think we'd be quite this style of defense, where we gave up all kinds of yardage, a lot of points, but in games where we got sacks and turnovers, we looked really good. But I think that a lot of it stems from just our struggles against the run. Jeffrey Simmons missed a lot of time for us this year, and that didn't help. But even when he was in, it felt like we didn't have quite enough in the run defense side of things. He only played 669 snaps this year, and a player of his caliber, you'd like to be out there even more. But he still led us in TFLs. It seemed like he didn't really give us a ton of pass rush this year, but thankfully that was replaced by the edge tandem of Terrell Riddick and Harold Landry. Landry's battled with injuries throughout this season, but I really liked the edge tandem, and Terrell Riddick I thought had an outstanding rookie year. He has superstar development, and he also has the ability to make plays against the run. So I think that was a home run pick for us. Sky's the limit for Terrell Riddick. I also really like Zach Cunningham. He doesn't make a lot of plays against the pass, but against the run, obviously he gets a lot of tackles, a lot of TFLs, and I do like to blitz a fair amount, and he succeeds doing that a lot. Cedric Samuel, especially first half of the year, I felt like he was making the case to be one of the steals of the draft. Kind of quieted down later in the year, but I think we'll take 10 TFLs and 6 sacks. perfect player to come off the bench and should continue to get better. Linval Joseph. Kind of disappointed in how our nose tackles played the run this year. He and Rashard Parker each had some struggles there. So a nose tackle in free agency, I think, would be really intriguing for us. Monty Rice. He is developing into a do-it-all linebacker for us, but with normal dev, it is going a little slowly. And as long as nobody's like getting to him in the second level, he can fly around and make plays. There were a couple times in the Bills game where you could see his pursuit on display, and it's fun to watch. The secondary maybe wasn't as spectacular as they were in year one, but I still like this cornerback duo a lot. Christian Fulton definitely had an up and down year, giving up a number of big plays, but still deflecting 23 passes, getting 2 interceptions. To me, Caleb Farley surpassed him this year, and I felt like he was more so the corner you wanted to avoid. Roger McCreary is a solid player. I think at worst he's an average slot corner, so I'm happy with him in that role. And then at safety, I felt like we were actually able to get more out of Kevin Byard this year with 5 interceptions, putting him in positions to hopefully capitalize on the ball in the air. And it can be tricky to kind of play call a safety into those spots, but I felt like I figured it out this year. What I find helps is that when you play more man coverage but have safety help, you can get the quarterbacks to think they can get some plays downfield, but the range of a good safety, when they're not wasting any steps and they're reacting almost instantly, they can take away some stuff. Amani Hooker, I think, is a good safety, not spectacular, and sometimes it just seems like he's a step away from making some of those plays you get from a Kevin Byard. Overall, we had the second least passing yards in the NFL, but I'm not really worried about that because we're number 1 in rushing. And it also helps when you're top 5 in scoring at 30 points a game. Defensively, I wonder if we can clean up some of what went wrong this year. We had like an average pass defense, but the run defense was definitely holding us back. And 483 points allowed is not very good. We didn't have a lot of low-scoring games, and it felt like the offense didn't have a ton of room for error, but at the same time, we did throw a lot of interceptions and got sacked a good bit, so there's an obvious recipe for games getting away from us. We had 53 sacks, though, and Terrell Riddick really opened things up for us. And I like bringing pressure. I think I do a lot more 5-man blitzes or 5-man rushes than I typically did in the past. Part of it is I can trust the corners a bit in man coverage. And I know that if we have 5 one-on-ones, I like our chances. We're still not great on third downs, and when you take so many sacks, you're going to face a lot of third and unconvertible almost, so that's just kind of the way it goes. Hey, we finished positive in turnover differential, oddly enough. A lot of turnovers in our games. 35 giveaways, 36 takeaways. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I feel like the interception problem is starting to get more under control. Sometimes, I'm going to make mistakes, and sometimes Willis is going to have a pass get away from him. And his upgrading has just led to not a ton of improved accuracy. So I think you're going to get more of those going into the future. But we're starting to get glimpses of that high end with Malik Willis, and I'm certainly not looking to replace him. And I think now we're getting so much out of him as a complete quarterback. So Patrick Mahomes won the MVP in our league this year. The rookie Brock Como came in 3rd place. So a successful pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then Jonathan Taylor was Offensive Player of the Year. Max Crosby on defense. Sal Sexton wins Offensive Rookie of the Year despite missing, I think, 3 regular season games. Terrell Riddick, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Does that mean he gets the X Factor? Because he's already at Superstar. If that's the case, I wouldn't want to be an AFC South quarterback facing us. But I had an outstanding time with the season and putting together all the episodes. So I cannot wait to get on to year 3. Best DB is Kevin Byard. How about that? Let me know your main takeaways of our season down below in the comments section. I'm interested in what you all have to say. And the league leaders. It was a great year for Desmond Ridder. 5,200 passing yards for him, 48 touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes, and 4 quarterbacks had over 40 touchdowns. Hopefully next year, somebody else can lead the league in interceptions. The rushing title went to Jonathan Taylor, but Derrick Henry did not play in the season finale. That's not a fair argument. He had 52 more carries than JT, who had 6 yards a carry, which is college stats. Zeke went for 1,500. Najee Harris went for 1,500. The star running backs did star running back things. It can be very difficult for rookies to make an impact early in a Madden franchise, and the most productive rookie runner only had 451 yards. Receiving, Cooper Kupp is on top once again. Mike Evans, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Keenan Allen, Scary Terry, Jamar Chase. Von Miller had 20 sacks this year. Kevin Byard and Jermaine Pratt, 5 interceptions. And I think there's a good chance Zach Cunningham actually gets a dev boost for whatever that would be worth in his late 20s. But it might affect his contract demands when he's eventually a free agent. But I think that his production is going to give him a boost. And in the NFC, Isaiah Simmons maybe panning out in this series. And Aaron Donald, that's a sack record set, 23.5. 5 picks for Bobby Wagner, TJ Edwards, AJ Boye. So overall, a division title, a 10-win season, 2 playoff victories, a tremendously successful year for our Titans team that is still developing. And here is a look at our roster. And I hope that next year we can have a chance to go back to the AFC Championship if possible. We'll see how easy that would be. I think you look at our team here and you're pretty excited that we made it this far, and there's still so many ways we could get this team better. Little tip here, if you're in the playoffs but want to see the contracts players want, this re-sign players screen is even available in preseason. You can't do anything there, but you can at least see the numbers. Derrick Henry is going to be a free agent, and right now I'm leaning towards just signing him to a 4-year deal. It's different than signing a late 20s running back in real life, and he is still the key to this offense. And if we had to replace Derrick Henry, I think that would make the offensive line issues more glaring. Henry overcomes a lot of that, and I don't want to get rid of Derrick Henry. That's just ridiculous. Calvin Ridley. Now, I've thought about making a house rule in this series where I don't negotiate with anybody that has 0 interest, as Ridley does here. So, I don't know yet if I'll go through with that entirely, considering he was already on the team. I mean, we have a couple things that are positive. It's just he wants the big market, I guess. Mecole Hardman's a free agent, but I don't have interest in a multi-year deal. It's weird, though, because sometimes I think about these moves in a vacuum, and it's like, I don't want Hardman at 3 years, 22. But if I have almost 90 mil in cap space, and it's not expected to be a problem, and I can cut a guy later if it really comes down to it, now what do you think? At the end of the day, I'll probably not sign him in the first period, because there are a lot of deep threats that will be available in free agency. Sheldon Rankins will be a free agent, James Hurst, Brent Urban. There really aren't a lot of key players here. Some of these guys do get playing time, but, Linval Joseph's 34, Danico Autry is 33. So we were already expected to go in some different directions at a couple of spots. And we're going to have plenty of money to chase any big-name free agents. I found some receivers that are going to be available, and that's going to be one of the things I try to address this year. I think that we could look to bring back Calvin Ridley, but he's not all that interested. So how much do we have to up our offer more than normal? One of the big names, though, is going to be T. Higgins. And it looks like at 86 overall, I'm expecting he'll want, 4 years and something similar to Calvin Ridley, probably 50, 60 million. I think it should be even more than that. But Higgins would be an option. Although, just going off the ratings and everything, Ridley offers more speed and better route running overall. I also identified Gabe Davis as a possibility, although that would probably be more so to replace the McCole Hardman role. And I kind of like a little more speed and acceleration in that role because I'm going to end up throwing more screens and catch and run stuff probably to that role than just trying to get vertical. Brian Edwards is available. It looks like Mike Evans is going to become available. And also an interesting player, but I think that there'd be a lot of overlap with the Traylon Burks skill set, is Brandon Ayuk. And Ayuk at least offers, I think, better short route running and is a little bit better athlete. I think I'd be interested still in Brandon Ayuk, paired up with Traylon Burks. There's also Chase Claypool, but I view him as more of a boom-bust player, and let's see what the ratings show here. Yeah, release and all the route runnings are just clustered there in the high 70s, low 80s. I think out of every receiver that's going to be available, Calvin Ridley is still my number one choice. Potentially a franchise tagged option. I think I'm willing to give him the long-term offer as well, especially with us going to the playoffs and now picking in the late 20s. You know, getting that top receiver in the draft just got harder. So why don't we begin our draft talks at the wide receiver position? I don't think we're going to have any chance to take Devian Bynes, who is the clear number one receiver in this class, an above-average athlete with plenty of strengths, both with the ball in his hands and his ability to run routes, make spectacular grabs. Somebody's going to get a potential star, and it ain't going to be us. I want to focus primarily on the players I have favorited right now, and I went through all the positions again today, and I have 78 players that are on my board. So if we just go to wide receiver, it's not a lot. Sidney Smith. Would you spend a first-round pick on Sidney Smith? I've broken him down before. He's got, track speed, but will he catch the ball? I don't know. AJ Bingham. Solid to good speed, good to great acceleration. He does have some athleticism. See a lot of holes, though, here with the C's and the D catch in traffic. Probably more of a second-round complimentary receiver with run-after-the-catch skills. Kirk Lippett, really good athlete. Great to elite, change of direction, A, ball carrier vision, B, spec catch, B, catch in traffic, B, deep route running with D, short. So another deep threat option, but you have to spend an early pick on him. Now, because wide receiver was an emphasis of mine, we have a lot of players with 100% complete profiles, and I really ended up liking these two receivers here that I think you can get for a significant value. Rashad Polite, 5'8", 177 pounds, F catching. But I think that what I've found going through the years I have in franchise is that F catching shouldn't scare you as much as it does. A lot of times F catching ends up being 71, 72, which isn't good, but after 2 years, it's going to be in a better spot, and I think that it's easy to overrate drops and those worries. Rashad Polite, elite with the ball in his hands, it appears. A, kick return. B, juke. I think that because you can probably get him in the 4th or 5th round, I'd be very interested. Like I said, not very interested in quarterbacks this year, but getting a backup on a cheap contract is always something that will intrigue me. But I don't think myself I've seen a single quarterback injury in this game. But Chet Wright, Mr. Irrelevant or 7th round pick option, he would probably be a really good backup. Yeah, 2 running backs on the board. Can you believe that? And I tried to find running backs I was interested in. Part of it is I expect to have back Derrick Henry. So I always look at those players and I'm like, with who we have, do you make sense? And a lot of times it's a player who compares great to Hassan Haskins, but isn't a whole lot different. And it's like, well, I'm not taking that player in the 2nd round, so you don't make the board. Rashad Bingham, though, I think offers a bit more athleticism and a different type of skill set than Hassan Haskins. If I could get a player like him in the 3rd round, I'd think about it. It's not likely I end up taking a running back, though. James Gardner's a power back who is projected to go on day 3, and he is, just a hammer. I'd take him if I felt like he was an upgrade over Hassan Haskins. And if it were like the 6th or 7th round, it's easier to make that call and just take him. Tight end's an interesting one. I like what they've done in the draft classes the last couple of years, making the tight ends more intriguing. And I like to have, probably in my series you've noticed, why are you always scouting blocking tight ends? Because I think that Chris Manhertz role we had this year was really valuable. And I think there are a lot of tight ends in this class that can fit right in. And Cedric Williams is a player who looks to have good hands, potentially good route running, or run blocking. I suppose route running could be decent as well. So I'll find some of these players only have 50% and use my final individual workout on them. But this is more of something I'd attack in the middle of the draft, and I'm very interested in getting one this year. I have choices too. Jamie Burnham would be a great option. Some of these players might just go too early, but I try to prepare in case somebody falls. I really liked this tackle class. So while Nicholas Petit-Frere I think is a passable tackle right now at this stage on his rookie contract, depending on how the board falls, what's going to be there in the first round? If the best choice is simply a really good pass blocking tackle, I can't pass because we have Nicholas Petit-Frere. Left tackle specifically has a number of strong options here, and Justin Childs is just one player with A, awareness, good to great strength, and B, run blocking to go with A to C pass block power. I might need a little more here. That pass block range at C to F is a little worrying. Tim Pierce is one player who has a little more solid pass blocking. Might have some weaknesses in the running game, but I can handle that a bit more at tackle as opposed to guard. At right tackle, I have a lot more options here that are mostly first 3-round players. So I think if I have to go find a starter here, or if that's just how the board falls, we're going to have a lot of good choices. Now, center appears to be the big need. And center is a position that is not deep in this class. There are only 4 draftable centers, according to just the main board. I liked 3 options, including an undrafted free agent who's more of a backup option. Chris Wembley. I think they've done a really good job at making mid-round linemen startable on day 1. They've raised that overall floor a little bit, and you can easily find like a 70 overall with a couple good ratings and develop them. Chris Wembley has really good pass block finesse, run block finesse. He's going to struggle a bit more with power, but a day 3 projection on a player with this many strengths, you're going to love that. And I'm not opposed to moving a guard inside or just going after a guard if they're the best player. Austin Tucker is an option from Alabama. Again, really good athlete, very strong, and I'm going to emphasize strength and run blocking for the interior players. A run block, B run block overall, and B pass block power. Might struggle with finesse, but he'd be a great fit for us. Couple more options here at right guard, and I even found some players that at least have the ability to come off the bench and do one thing well. And sometimes, that run blocking isn't going to be very good, but there's a chance that some of these players could end up with decent pass blocking. And when you're talking about backups, I think that's good to have. We move over to defense, and I think just getting run stoppers is the main focus this offseason. Trying to get deeper there so we can handle some injuries, and hopefully somebody who can fix a pretty bad run defense that cost us a number of games this season. Quincy Saunders. On the right side of the screen it shows A block shed, A tackle, and the same for Marcus Conley. Most of the players on my board here happen to be early round options, and we'll see if I'm able to make that work. At defensive tackle, we do have a lot of choices, and they're all over the draft. I like the defensive tackles here. Eric Herrick is one player who could be an option for us in the first round. A power moves, A to C finesse. Just all around a pretty solid prospect. I like the improvements they've made with the scouting this year, but I think they really need to do a better job at organizing this data and allowing you to analyze it a lot faster than clicking in and out of all these profiles. We got to get some like sortable columns here where you can look at all these ratings at the same time and make easier comparisons and rank your board a lot easier. It does get tough to juggle all this stuff, especially because sometimes the information we get is vague. And I like that, but I just wish it was easier to still sort and go through things quicker. At linebacker, I could look at a run stopper just to get some depth, but I think that linebacker is not going to be a huge concern. A lot of these players are actually just going to be pass rushers that I happen to like and I don't expect to be able to get. But I think that if we can find a developmental linebacker, I'd be interested. We just have a couple that are also intriguing. But I know that Will Harrison was a player I really liked when I scouted him in season. Good to great strength, great to elite speed. A zone coverage, B tackling, and A awareness. He's good enough to take despite it not being much of a need. And yeah, that's it at corner. I didn't like last year's corner class, and I felt like I ended up missing on a few guys. This year, I'm back to say I do not like this corner class whatsoever, but this time I think I'm right. Because not only are the coverage grades underwhelming, and I think that you have to be okay just getting guys who have like C-man and C-zone. But where I draw the line is at poor to marginal speed. And we have some of the least athletic corners in this class. If you're not going to be great in coverage, at least give me some athleticism. And these guys have no long speed. It seems to be somewhat of a trend in this game. Taylor Mayberry. Okay, we got athleticism this time. A catching. D press, B to D man coverage, and D zone coverage. So even there's not a lot to go with. I feel like I can just go find a free agent or something, and thankfully it's not a huge need for us right now. Corner's actually a pretty strong position group for us. The only one I liked is Devontae Singleton. He's 6 foot, 192, aggressive ball hawk, solid to good speed, good to great acceleration. I will take that. He can press, he can tackle, and he might not be awful in coverage. I have some safeties that I like, but it's hard to see me taking one early. But there are some decent safeties in this class. Let's see, I have 2 strong safeties on the board and 3 free safeties. Today I found Ramon Amaya, and I was really interested in him. He's a 6 foot, 222 pound run support safety. Solid to good athleticism for a lot of these. So at least an average athlete. A block shed, B awareness, A tackling, A hit power. I look at those and I'm like, all right, you're a player who might be able to make an impact on special teams. Maybe some 3 safety stuff around the box. You can be a player that's versatile. So I had to point him out. The latest mock draft is going to have us picking in the top 10. So this is a little outdated at this point. But it'll give you at least an idea for mock draft 2 where some of these players are expected to go. Oh yeah, Quincy Saunders. I liked him a lot. Have fun watching him go top 3. Connor Rogers. I think I added him to the board today and didn't realize how early he may go. I doubt Devian Bynes ends up going 12. I just think this whole mock draft is probably garbage at this point. Remember that we don't have a second round pick. I just did. We have a first round pick, 2 thirds, but a gap here between our first and second pick. And then a 4th, no 5th, but a 6th and 2 7ths. We could end up trading up with our mid-round selections, but that's going to lead us to having less picks overall, and then we're taking a lot of chances on guys late. Do we have a strong enough roster to consolidate for a second straight year and be aggressive, or do we need these picks to go and get as much depth as possible? I'll have to take another look at my board and make sure I have enough if those picks stay where they are, because it seemed like a lot of my board was, you know, first and second round players that are easy to like. Do I have enough options on day 2 and 3 where there's a player with some upside? And if we only have one pick in like the top 90, what do you try to do with that? There's also the option of moving down from the first round and trying to get, you know, into the second round and then maybe get a 4th round pick or a 3rd round pick. And again, I'll just have to see if the board that I have and the players that I like makes sense for that approach. If it happens that I only really like the early guys and everybody else is just kind of a maybe, a backup, then I'll tailor my strategy around that. On the right side of the screen, I have the cap hits for our players going into next year, and there are some big numbers. I know it said we had like 90 million in cap space or something. I wasn't sure if that was fully accurate, because there are some big hits. But I'd like to hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. What do you think our approach should be to this offseason? Do you think there's a glaring need we have to address, or a specific player that we need to focus on? If any of those draft prospects really caught your attention too, leave feedback down below. And I'll try to get a little more prepared for the draft and get ready for a very big offseason going into year 3 with Tennessee. That's it for today, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and have a great day.